Okay, this is rather loud. I didn't expect it to be that loud. A bit of a shocker for me as well. I have to thank you all for your patience. I see that a number of you have been here way before 5 p.m. When we intended to start, and we're starting at a few minutes, or more than a few minutes past 5. Thank you so much for your patience. And thank you so much for coming to this book reading. I'm going to confess, it's my first time at one. I have never attended a book reading before. And I also have the privilege to not just attend this one, but also to host and moderate it. And it's such an honor for me. So thank you so much for having me do this, Mr. Ishiekwene. I really appreciate it. We're here for the book reading of Writing for Media and Monetizing It. That's the title of the book, written by the Vice Chairman and Editor-in-Chief of the leadership newspapers. You'll hear more about him. You'll hear more about him and his exploits much later. But he's written this book, very interesting, very unassuming on the outside, but I find it a really rich resource material for wherever you are in the level of writing. Very, very interesting, even if I say so. Anyway, so I have to thank you once again. Thank you for your patience. We hope that this will not take too much time, since time is already fast spent, and we hope to make this as interesting as possible. So sit back, relax, and let's just do this together. I can ask you to clap for yourself. Do they do that at book readings? Do they clap for themselves? They do, right? Thank you. So please do clap for yourselves for being such patient and such indulgent guests at this event. I'm going to be asking the co-founder of Rovingheights, Mr. Enyade Adidotson, to please come forward for the welcome remarks. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Good evening, Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Rovingheights Bookstores. It's a pleasure to have you in our space. And a warm welcome to Mr. Ishiekwene. I'm so sorry for murdering your name. Moderator, thank you so much, Maupe Ogun-Yusuf, for. It's a pleasure to have you in our space. It's really exciting anytime we host authors events, and for us at Rovingheights, it's one of the high points of what we do, right? Not only book selling, but also creating the experience for readers, for authors to meet and engage and exchange ideas. It's really exciting to be hosting Mr. Azu. I grew up reading his column in the Punch newspapers, and I think some weeks ago, a friend of mine was retelling an experience during our undergraduate days when I had to use my pocket money, to buy, I think it was a Punch and the Guardian, just because I wanted to read columns and that meant we didn't have pocket money to make dinner for that evening. And so when I was much younger, I used to have dreams of becoming a columnist, becoming a journalist. And I guess I was inspired by reading columns of works of Mr. Azu, Mr. Ruben Abati, and many other columnists in my 20s. And it's really nice that they've gone beyond, Mr. Azu especially. This is the second or fourth book, sir? Second book. And he's gone ahead beyond writing columns, beyond writing commentaries to put together a full-fledged work, which I think is very, very important. I think it was Scott Galloway, some American professor of marketing, that said, greatness is achieved in the agency of others, which in a sense is about the need to mentor and help the younger generation achieve greatness and grow on the shoulders of other people. And I think that's the reason why Mr. Azu's book is very, very important, writing for media and monetizing it. It's really important for us to have books that are written for our own realities. A number of times when you're looking for business books, you're looking for self-help books, there are books written by Americans and British authors who write about realities that we cannot relate or connect to. But it's really exciting that we're having books written by seasoned journalists, our own masters of the craft, telling us how to write better, distilling experiences of other seasoned practitioners. I remember pausing earlier in the day reading the interview you had with Mr. theologically, the Professor William John. It's very, very rich interview, and I think it's just one of the beautiful things that you find written in Mr. Agu's book. For a bookseller, we're excited that we're having a book like this, and I think that the other piece that excites me the most is how the verve and the passion that Mr. Azu has brought to promoting the book. I don't know if you guys have seen the videos; they're really amazing, and you should just check them out. And for us as booksellers, one of our pet peeves is the fact that you have writers who are so excited about writing their book, and when they write their book, that's just about all. They think the books will sell on the strength of what they've written without little effort to promoting them. And I think that Mr. Azu has demonstrated excellence in this called the fact that he's written a book, but he's also made a lot of effort to promote. And one of the reasons why we're actually doing this event is just as part of the promotional efforts for the book. I do not want to stand between your time, and the wonderful session that lie ahead of us. I just hope that you take a lot of insights from today's conversation, and then when you get home, you talk about this on your social media handles. You buy a copy for yourself, also for your friends, and then also wait to get your book autographed. Enjoy the rest of the session. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Really appreciate this. I'm just going to look. I was looking through the agenda and I realized that the next item says recognition of guests. As far as I'm concerned, this is a small, intimate crowd, and I think that everybody can get a chance to introduce themselves. Very quickly, can you just, perhaps if you know the author, if you have a relationship with him, if you read his work, tell us how you came here, what your name is. Quickly, like 30 seconds. Thank you.
Hi everyone, my name is Ishiekwene. I'm going for almost 20 years.
Okay.
Then my boss, my editor, and mentor.
I see.
So I'm happy to be here.
Thank you so much for coming. Sir.
Remy Oyimu is my name. I've only just met the author, but I was at the Bookstore.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, sir.
My name is Ishiekwene. I just met him. I'm a writer and I'm interested to know what you have.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Here, you don't need to be introduced anymore, sir.
This was going to take your mic.
Hello everyone. My name is Wilson. I'm just meeting the author. I came through my former colleague.
I see. Colleague from where? Mind my asking?
Okay, we were at eHealth Africa together.
I see.
But now she has moved on.
Good afternoon, everyone, or evening. My name is Elizabeth Okola. The author is many things to me. My mentor, uncle, father sometimes, grandfather sometimes. It depends on who is asking. But I'm happy to be here.
Thank you
everyone.
so
Thank
much.
you.
Thank you so much for coming. Really appreciate it. Thank you, sir.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Julius. I hide under the shadow
Of who?
of Ishiekwene. Just walk in the shadow.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Ishiekwene. I work for leadership as well.
Hi.
Saz is my boss.
I see. Thank you.
Good evening,
This is a
everyone.
leadership family.
Yeah.
I see.
More like leadership family. So I'm secretary to Mr. Azu. I'm like an apprentice.
Oh, I see. When I know I can't reach you myself, you better get your
Good
contact.
evening, everyone. My name is Benis Abraham.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Lisa?
Evening, everyone. I was at book launch when you had it at the Adwa Center. My name is Chris Garki. I work with Taliban's group as a cast. So I just follow up with him.
Okay, thank you so much, sir. You almost need an introduction, but please.
My name is Adebayo Odore. Permit me for 1 minute to tell one story. I met Azu far away. I worked with Punch newspaper. I left Punch before it came. And I left in a rebellious group. We followed Amuka to go and start Vanguard. And then I met Ogushola, who took over as chairman. And he said, you follow them? Why was asking me that question? I was the first person that Punch sponsored his his post-secondary education. I joined Punch with A-level, and Punch, in my first year, decided to send me to the university. So when I came, he said, but we are lucky we have recruited some bright young people, and they free the vacancies, people like you left. And I said, who are they? The first name he mentioned to me was Azu. And that's how I knew Azu for the first time before we even met face to face.
Wow. What an interesting story for an introduction. Well, thank you so much. It was really lovely to have you all here. Thank you. I believe that our crowd was swell at the time, but we're really very happy, chuffed as a matter of fact, to have you all. I'm just going to go quickly. Those who haven't really met the author up close and personal, I'm just going to read his bio very quickly, at least his work bio. He doesn't have anything about his date of birth here, I don't know why, but this is what we have. So a little more about the author. Azu Ishiekwene currently serves as Senior Vice Chairman, Editor-in-Chief, Leadership Media Group. He was MD, Editor-in-Chief of The Interview magazine, a privately owned monthly Q&A magazine based in Abuja, and a director of Dantier Center for Good Leadership and Journalism, a capacity building center indirectly accredited to the African Union Economic, Social and Cultural Council, that's the AU ECOSOC. He has over 35 years experience in journalism, that's older than some of us, but not me included. You also have this. He is a fellow of the Nigerian Guild of Editors, editorial board member of the World Policy Journal, a former member of the board of the World Editors Forum, and founding board member of the Global Editors Network. He was chairman of the judging panel of the CNN African Journalist of the Year panel, as I know. When I apply, I'll let you know.
That's why I said was.
Author and a columnist with local and international media houses, City Press of South Africa, Daily Maverick, South Africa, In-Depth News based in Europe, Ghanaian Chronicle, and Clarin of Argentina. He is the author of the book, The Trial of Nuhu Ribadu. Azu is one of Nigeria's most widely read, decorated, and syndicated columnists, with his articles published as far as Argentina in Spanish, Europe, and North America. He is a graduate of mass communication from the University of Lagos, no surprise, and holds a master's degree in public administration and international affairs from the same university. He is a volunteer faculty member of the School of Policy, Politics, and Governance, SPPG. He was a voluntary part-time lecturer of journalism at the Department of Mass Communication, University of Lagos, and also at the NIJ, that's the Nigerian Institute of Journalism, OGBA, in Lagos as well. He's currently chairman of Open Fees, an Abuja-based NGO that pays school fees for indigent students in public schools in Abuja. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, please meet the author, Mr. Azu Ishiekwene. All right, so we're just going to get to the book reading now, and I believe that he already has a few of some of his favorite chapters, which have been curated for our listening pleasure. I hope that this microphone, I'll give you mine because I'm a little more sure of this one. Thank you. I think it's behaving well now, but can't be too sure.
All right.
So it has a few chapters or a few parts curated for our listening pleasure. I'm just going to keep quiet now and let you listen, please. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Maupe. I think she deserves a round of applause. When I had to make a choice of who was going to be my interlocutor at this event, and I've deliberately and intentionally chosen my words, I had no doubt at all that Maupe would just, I'm sure that she's not a stranger to any one of us. We know her very well, and all the great and extraordinary job that she does at channels. So really an honor for me to have you. And to call once and then you turned up immediately. I really appreciate that. Please let's give her a round of applause. And I would also like to, although this is not a vote of thanks, I'm supposed to go straight into the vote. But I think some housekeeping would be in order. I'd like to thank Mr. Adedot, one of the co-founders of Rovingheights, for also hosting us this evening. The first time I met him, I think that was on Friday or so. I've never met before. And so when Chinelo, fixed the appointment somewhere in Use, I was looking forward to meeting somebody with gray hair, perhaps with a walking stick, and and then he pops up, and I said, just wait a minute, and I say that because of what people say about reading and about books. And here is a young man, relatively young man, who's not just only interested in books, but heavily invested in books. We really, really thank you for creating this space. Very, very sacred space indeed for creating it, and also for hosting us. So thank you very much indeed. And I'd also like to thank everyone for taking time out. It was a rainy night and then very rainy early in the morning. And this is a time when you all should be heading home to either have your dinner or wine or something. And then that you took time out to be here for about an hour. So it's something that I really, really deeply appreciate. And there are folks online too who, because we are streaming this service, who are also joining us from different locations. I really thank everyone who has made time out. And also thank my publishers, Premium Times. Now, with all of that out of the way, now let me go to the business at hand, which is the book reading. And I have chosen passages from 3 chapters as well. I've chosen passages from chapter 9, from chapter 13, and from chapter 15. And let me say, if you don't do anything at the end of this book reading, if you don't find anything, if you don't even want to buy, please buy a book from this store. I mean, if that's all, even if you don't want to buy Writing for Media and Monetizing, just buy a book and go with a book. All right. So now let me come back to the matter at hand, as I said earlier, and I would read passages from each of these chapters. And if the moderator will do the same, so the way we intend to proceed, after each chapter, I should ask you, after passages of each chapter, I should ask you questions. And then when I read all 3 chapters, she will then open it to the audience for questions on all passages that I have read. So the way the book is written is such that every chapter opens with an epigram. And that is how chapter 9, apart from there are 15 chapters in the book. And the 14 of those 15 chapters open with an epigram. And so I'm starting with the epigram on chapter 9, which is one of the 3 chapters I have selected, and I've taken a few passages from chapter 9. And so I read the epigram. AI is a tool. The choice about how it gets deployed is ours. And this was said by Oren Ezeoni, Professor Emeritus of Computer Science. And I read the passages. The first time someone suggested to me that a robot could write for me, I laughed it off. Ha, ha, ha. How is that possible? I thought the discussion was over. A few days later, he curated a number of my past articles, fed them into a digital loop, and produced a copy that stunned me. Were decades of my literary effort going to be undermined by a generative tool? Was it finally true what Time said in its cover of 5 February 2009, that journalism, an essential part of literary creativity, was finally in its death throes? Not so fast. By the time I inspected the computer-generated repurposed content closely, I found that even though the artificial intelligence AI tool had made a good effort of copying my imprint, my DNA was still intact. The allure of AI in writing is undeniable. Tools like Grammarly, Jasper, ChatGPT, and others offer a range of services for grammar checking, from grammar checking to style suggestions, and even content generation. However, the danger lies in over-reliance on them, which may result in losing the personal touch that defines your unique voice and style. AI is programmed to follow patterns. It lacks the human ability to feel emotions, the intuition, the unique experiences that shape a writer's voice. Hence, while it can provide a strong foundation or help or a helpful aid, it is crucial that you own that your own voice remains predominant. End of quote, and end of the reading from chapter 9. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. I think it's as clear as can be. So I'm just going to ask you a few questions. I read the whole chapter 9, I think, after you told me. I have a very interesting story about this book. So I was very excited when Onkwazu sent me a copy of the book. And for the life of me, to be very honest, I started reading the book. And I think I stopped maybe at the first chapter or so. And I was very busy in the period. I was away in Lagos when he called me, and did he call me or he sent me a message? And he said, "Maupe, have you started reading the book?" And I said, "Yes, I have." I guess he doubted me. So he said, "What parts have you read?" And for the life of me, I couldn't remember. I couldn't remember anything I had read. Anyways, I tried to tell him that, look, evidence that I have read it is that I know how your book is structured, but I can't remember anything I have read. So I made it a point of duty for weeks. When I got back from Lagos, I carried this book in my bag. Every chance I got, I read a page or two, and then I dropped it. If you see the book now, it's sadly, badly dog-eared, but hey, we move. So I went and read the whole of chapter 9 after he indicated that he was going to be reading from it. And one of the things he didn't disclose in his reading is that he said that that chapter was done with human and AI efforts. Is that correct?
Yes, some parts of it.
Yeah, some parts of it. So I was curious to know what parts were, how much percentage would you give to AI and how much would you say was you?
Okay, I actually in the book was referring to an experience I had. I wrote the entire stuff, right? But I was referring some parts to, which was not among the parts of this I read, to the experience I had, with how AI works and how people have come to not just use it as a tool that could help improve their work, but have now completely surrendered or outsourced their own creative thinking to AI. So and I have a couple of such tools, and I'm sure that we all have, and use one. That's a couple of such tools that we have, whether it's ChatGPT or Perplexity or Meta AI. So for example, if you have on your phone, and I demonstrated this to a friend of mine, and it looked as if it was as if I was performing magic, but it's not magic. If you have any of these tools, you can do it. And I said to ChatGPT, for example, I want to write an article. And it says, "I'm ready to help you. What can we do today?" I said, "Do you know one Azu Ishiekwene?" And he said, "Yes, I know Azu Ishiekwene." I said, "So who is he?" Then he gives me, and if you do this as we are speaking, you get similar responses. And then he tells me, "Oh, Azu is so person." I said, "Oh, do you know a couple of the articles that he has written?" And he said, "Yes." I said, "Can you get me a few?" And a few articles pop up. I said, "Now, AI, I want you to do something even more intimate. I want you to write like Azu." And he says, "Sure." And then actually conjures up an article and writes and produces like 2 or 3 sentences. But if you want it to even provide more extensive a rendering of how Azu writes. It can. But if you inspect, and which was part of what I reflected in the passage that I read, if you inspect it closely, if I inspect it closely, I know that it's not my work. People who do not follow me close enough may think that it is my work, but I know it's not mine. So the point really around the use of AI and ChatGPT, and I don't know whether we've gotten to that point. To answer your question directly, that passage was not included. To answer your question directly, is that which was a reflection of the passage that I read, is that in the world in which we are living today, people have come to depend almost wholesale on some of these tools, on some of these bots to write for them. There is a limit to what that is not what it is supposed to do. It is supposed to bring out the best version of you. It's actually supposed to take off the drudgery from your work and enable you to, and enable your own best version to come out. That is what it ought to be. Unfortunately, that is not what it is today.
Do you use it often?
I use it for research. And it's basically a tool that you can use for research. I mean, if I'm writing basically anything and I ask it questions, it will respond. But I do not depend on what I get from it for research to write my piece. And also depending on which of the tools you use, there are different levels of engagement with these tools. There's open source one, which means that you can just, and there's also the professional one that you can subscribe to and use. Okay? But it's interesting also what happens sometimes when you are using some of these tools, because these are tools that were actually developed elsewhere. And language develops with every culture, with every society. So sometimes AI, in whatever form you are using it, whether in form of Grammarly or especially if in the form of Grammarly when you are writing, and you need, and it suggests some options to you, which it will tell you that these are better options. If you want a bit of Nigerian flavor to be part of what you are writing, I bet it is going to tell you that that is incorrect. So you have to know what you want to overrule it. And only God knows how many times I say, my friend, look, this is not a Grammarly thing. You don't even know, dismiss or override. So the point is that the tools are very helpful tools, to be honest, because the speed. But each of the tools will also depend on the level of involvement, because some of them have references, and I prefer to use tools that have references, so that so to avoid plagiarism or avoid abusing other people's work. So ChatGPT, I prefer Perplexity, for example, because when Perplexity gives you options, it will, if you're researching using that tool, it will give you citations, okay, where it got some of the things it pulled out for you from. Some tools, especially if you are using those tools at the ordinary level, may not be able to give you those things, and then of course will open you to the risk of plagiarism, which is dangerous.
All right, thank you for that. I think we can move to the next chapter now.
All right. And so the next one, we'll move now to chapter 13. Chapter 13 is one of my favorite chapters for many reasons.
The title is Making Money.
How did you?
Making money.
That is one of my favorite chapters, because someone was telling me yesterday when I went to see one big man. He said, Mr. Azu, all those things, you're right. It's that monetizing it. That is the thing. That is the cocoa of the, So it's one of my favorites for that reason, not just in the literary sense of making money, but in the sense that it offers reward for honest effort. That is a wider context in which I would like to apply that. Not just in terms of cash, which is not a bad thing if you have earned it, but also in terms of reward that you can get for creating content. And I use content in a more general sense of the word, because I recognize that either in this room or on the call, there are people who are not necessarily journalists, but who are content creators and who want to be rewarded for their honest work. So the question is, what does this book offer you in terms of the ability or the capacity or possibility, if you like, of earning a reward, how be it cash or in other form, expanding your network, increasing your impact for an honest effort. And so the epigram with which I open chapter 13 is one by a very famous man. I will just say the epigram and I leave you to guess who it is. Content is king. Well, okay, don't think it, don't sweat it. That was by Bill Gates. Content is king. Now, I read. And this is my own content. It is good if you trained as a journalist, but you don't really need a degree in anything to create content for which you can earn money. While a number of traditional or mainstream platforms and businesses are scratching their heads, wondering where the next client check will come from, smarts in the new creative economy are leveraging their value to make earnings. There is a bit of history to the tough war that broke out after the increasing adoption of new media in the 1980s. First, traditional media practitioners didn't take it too seriously. Then, as the adoption spread, especially among younger audiences, thereby attracted larger audiences, changing media consumption habits and shifting advertising spend, panic set in. In this chapter, this chapter aims to do the following. A, share tools for developing minimum viable content. B, explore how to use data and analytics as guide. C, explaining how to master the art of value creation. And D, show how to lock in audiences and monetize content. And so, also in this chapter, I provided about 5 tips, but I'm just going to take 3 of the 5 tips, and I'm sure you can find the rest when you get a copy of the book. Tip number 1, power of 1,000. Kevin Kelly, an optimist and motivational writer, said in an article in Tim Ferriss's book, Tools of Titans, that 1,000 true fans are all you need to make things happen. And I quote him now. To be a successful creator, he says, you don't need millions of dollars or millions of customers or millions of clients or millions of fans. To make a living as a craftsperson, a photographer, a musician, a designer, an author, an animator, app maker, entrepreneur, or inventor, you need only thousands of true fans. End of quote. Kelly, whose example was earlier used in chapter 4, recommends 2 basic steps. A, create enough each year that can earn an average of $100 a true fan, and B, have a direct relationship with your fans. I go to tip number 3, specialize. Not many clients will be willing to pay for services that do not offer any special value. One of the reasons why the Financial Times is one of the most successful paid online services is that stockbrokers and investors generally can hardly match its quality elsewhere. Specialize in what you are best at and do it like no other. And it won't be long before that value will begin to generate an earning. And the 4th one, consistency. Gold is hardly found on the surface. It takes lots of digging, persistently and consistently, to strike at it. Clients don't want to part with their money if they are not sure you'll be there during the next Harmattan or perhaps during the next rainy season. It is by consistency that trust in your brand will grow, and with it, a willingness by users to reward you. That's my reading from this chapter. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. I still remember the book reviewer, Dr. Ruben Abati, when he was talking about the title of this book. He said, writing for media and monetizing it. He said, is it that my friend Azu has found a secret and all of this time he kept to himself? But did he call you about that afterwards?
No, not exactly. But we teased, later we just teased each other about it.
Okay, well, I guess I'm sure you knew some of the secrets which you already shared in the book. But very interesting. I never forgot that part. And when you say, you talk about the internet and how it has revolutionized, writing and the creative space in general, in every facet. Initially, journalists saw it as a threat. Later on, they realized that it could be a tool, it could be an ally in their work. And now we know that we're in the age of clicks, likes, and shares, and that's how reward comes. For someone like you who has been in the business of news, in the business of serious journalism, how would you say that you continue, or what I say, how have you maintained your professionalism in the face of popularity?
Thank you very much, Maupe, for that question. So I think it helps always to just keep your head down and not to get carried away by either by what's the Yoruba? How will you? I don't know whether grammar. Ariwoja. How do you say that in English? Yes. Market noise, the noise of the market. All right. Now we leave that to Google Translate. So whatever it is you're doing, it's very important not to get distracted. That essentially is the point that I'm making. Because it's easy to get distracted either by praise or by people who just choose to criticize. But the important thing is for you to remain focused and to remain consistent. So now in terms of how,
let me rephrase that question. Now, yes. When I spoke about popularity, I didn't mean yours. I mean, yours is certainly not in doubt, but I meant in terms of the fact that serious work doesn't sometimes get the accolade it deserves. It doesn't get as many clicks, likes, and shares as other works that might be considered not so serious. How do you, encourage people who have decided that this is the path I want to follow, to remain consistent and true to that path?
Well, that's a fair question. That's a great question to ask. Why great work sometimes does not. I think sometimes it's a matter of serendipity, and sometimes also a matter of then just going back to it and seeing how you can. And when I think about serendipity, I think I'll give you a couple of examples. I'm thinking, for example, of Stephen King. And Stephen King wrote that. There was a book that Stephen King wrote, and in any case, Stephen King is one of my favorite authors. I'd recommend his book on writing to one. And there was a book that he wrote, and he was trying to sort of, if you like, write his way out of poverty. He had 3 children, 3 or 4 children he had. He was a school teacher. It was just, but he was a great writer, and he was fascinated by the craft and art of writing. But then he wrote a book which, for some reason, just didn't seem to strike it. Nobody paid attention. Nobody sort of noticed, But then I think the writer, maybe later he sold the right to Doubleday, and then he found that it was just serendipity. His wife had asked him. I remember he said in his book on writing. His wife had asked him, "Look, how much do you think you need to make from writing for you to be famous enough to earn big checks, and for us to earn a decent living? We want to, And he said, "Do you think if you make like something like $40,000 or $4,000 or something like that, do you think?" He was quite reticent. He didn't want to say. He just said, "Well, that would be great." In any case, where I'm going is that when he finally struck it with a book which he had written, which for a long time did not even get noticed. But when that book was resold, the new publishers, whatever it was they did, whether it was, I don't know whether it was the marketing, but whatever it was, I just put it down to serendipity. And he struck it in and really made it big. He himself was surprised. And kept, I think the title of the book is Carrying. And then kept asking himself, what was it that he really wrote that struck him? You know, he didn't quite know. But I think that today, so that's one example of how sometimes luck or serendipity or divine, whatever it is, can sort of play a role in how content creators, I want to use a more general word, can make it big. But there are other things that can also help. For example, for many years I tried as much as I could to stay off social media, internet, just not for me at all. But then here I was creating content, and I had to ask myself, how long am I going to be winking in the dark? Sometimes social media, whatever you like to think of, WhatsApp, for example, or some social media platforms, which some people call poison, they call it the poison well. Sometimes it can also be like a knife. It depends on what you use it. It can be put to good or bad use, like many things in life. So there was a time as a writer that I then had to ask myself, of how long am I just going to write and just depend entirely on writing and getting published in mainstream, just the traditional, mainstream media. We say all the time that younger audiences don't read. Is that really correct? Is it something that we need to engage? Is it the form of the content that is a problem, or how the content is consumed? So these are questions that we really did, and it was a question I had to ask myself at some point. And so gradually I started asking myself how I could sort of optimize the use of social media and reach to larger, greater audiences. Hopefully you make more impact, create more network, get more reward for my effort. So it's also sometimes a function of, and I have been helped in this by many younger people. I have really humbled myself and made myself available to learn and teachable, because that's very important as well. How you open yourself to new forms of knowledge, new techniques, new technology, and help make yourself open to help from younger audiences and people who are more adept at using these platforms, about how you can use it to optimize your work. Because it may be that you are doing a great job, but you are not just finding the right platforms or the right channel to share that work that you're doing. It may make a difference, or the form in which you share it. Because which is something I have come to discover regarding even the newer forms of media, that each one has its strengths and its weaknesses. So even when you decide to play in that space, you also have to do a deeper dive of asking yourself which form of content is more amenable to which particular platform or medium. So I think it's a variety. Sometimes it could be a matter of serendipity. At other times, it may just be a matter of trying to recalibrate your effort and see how you reach wider audiences. It could also just be the season, the time, you could write and then people never take notice of it until many years later. And they say, wait a minute, somebody wrote this thing long, and then, so a number of factors.
Like the new song, I do not know what happened, but that song just came from nowhere, and look at what's happening now. There's a whole challenge around it. Okay, so let's go to this. I have one more question that I don't know whether I should ask you. I should let you go to the final chapter. I wanted to ask you, you said something about engagement. One of the teams is engaging with your audience, especially when you start out. When you start out, it's easier because you don't have a lot of people following you. Much later, when your audience starts to grow, how do you begin to keep that same level of engagement? Do you want to share what your experience has been?
Yes, I mean, the thing I've also, for me, it's still a learning curve, still a learning process. And Sam there is one of my mentors. So, it's a learning curve for me. But I think that it's not everything. When you begin, the first thing I did, my case for example, and let me just break it down. So I was writing for I write for newspapers, and that was how I started writing. But then I started asking myself, how can I expand this? So from what I write in the papers, I get in the studio and do a bit of podcast and sort of repurpose the content and reach more audiences. And then over time, as that grew, I then created Ishiekwene.com, which is actually a platform where I curate, so that if I need to write a book about or compile a number of the articles I've written in the past about 30 years, I don't have to start looking for where to find them. There's a repository where I can easily find that. And then, of course, when this book was presented as Zoom.media. But the point I'm trying to get to is that you also have to be careful how you open these spaces. And I then, of course, created social media handles. I'm on Twitter, I'm virtually on all the social media platforms. But regarding the question of time and how you manage and keep engaged, I think that it is not everything that you put out there that is said that you must respond to. Otherwise, you have virtually no time for anything else. You also have to choose what you respond to, what you engage, and what you just let slide. And I'm sure that you have seen conversations sometimes on social media threads where you don't even know what started, when you don't, what are these people talking about, you know? And sometimes too, depending on the level where you reach, you can also then get managers. You can get somebody on, first you can get somebody on part-time. If your followership is growing, you can get somebody on part-time. And there are a lot of folks who you can get on part-time to help you begin to manage that space, or administer the space, to keep it sane and civil, and so forth and so on. But I think my recommendation about how to start is not to start by opening the space entirely, or feeling obliged to respond to every remark, every comment, every praise, or everything that is said on your handles. I don't think you're obliged to respond.
All right, thank you. I think we can finally move to my favorite chapter, chapter 15, which you're reading it from. Yes.
Right, I'm not going to ask you, Maupe, because you're my interlocutor here, why this is your favorite, but I can almost guess. So I'm taking my last passage from chapter 15, which is actually a chapter in which I interviewed two media icons from different generations. And so here the reading goes. And of course, for this final chapter, there is no epilogue. And I just give a background from the text to help give you a perspective on how this interviews came about, or the persons that I interviewed. Unlike the interviews in the previous chapters, in which the respondents spoke about more or less specific areas of interest or expertise, this chapter, chapter 15, is different. The interview with Olojede, that's Dele Olojede, and also the one with another serially decorated journalist, Toyosi Musheye, both from different generations, cover a broader range of issues, from how they began their careers to the obstacles they wrestled with, how they became global brands, and how they are also reinventing themselves. And so what I have done, a series of questions that I asked, it was like a Q&A. This chapter is actually a Q&A after that perspective. So I've just extracted, I'm taking a passage from the questions that, one of the questions that I asked Mr. Dele Olojede, and his response to that question. So the question was, what special skills does a writer require to distinguish himself or herself? And Olojede replies, first, a commitment to the craft itself, that you love it. That is not something that your parents told you, that it is not something your parents told you to go and do, and you accepted dutifully. You have to be a committed journalist, or to be committed to your craft. You can't be somebody who is jealous of bankers earning more money than you. The second thing for me is that that commitment allows you to apply yourself over time to getting better at practicing your craft. 3, I think that you have to have an abiding sense of justice and fairness in this world. That is important. That it is important that through your work, some measure of justice can occasionally manifest. And we know that the world is unjust and violent. But occasionally our work can make a small difference. Every journalist has to be a voracious reader, particularly books that make long arguments or tell the narratives of particular issues or people or places and so on, because that's what creates a deep well for you to draw on and to refine your own moral universe. Now, the other is the question between Mushaye and myself. Now, this was my question to Mushaye. I just take that passage. One of the questions I asked her. How can young African cultural entrepreneurs leverage content in local languages to create valuable audiences? And her response was this. There's a massive audience for content in local languages. There are millions of people who are disenfranchised because they can't access the news in English. The key is to know who these people are, where they are, what they want, how they want it, and when they want it. As human beings, we want to matter. Making people matter in our content is the answer. End of passage. Thank you.
And end of reading.
But not end of question. Oh well, I already confessed that chapter is my favorite. I mean, 2 amazing people interviewed. And I told him, I said, look, why did you not include that on the front page? And I talk about marketing, because I kind of think that those interviews and also have the potential, but they're not the only interviews. I mean, on further reading, I found that I actually did enjoy, in particular, the chapters where you had interviews with people, maybe because that's what I do for a living. I'm not going to ask any question on that particular chapter. I'm going to open the floor now for questions. If you would like to ask any questions with regards to any of the chapters that he has read out, starting from AI, starting from monetizing, works of art that you've written, and then this very last one, in life, let me read it now. Let me not misquote it. God and luck, something like that matters. Yeah, in life, luck and God matter. Those are that's the last chapter. So if we have any questions, do we have any questions? Any questions from anyone? Yes, please. Thank you. She wants you to ask first, please, because you indicated first.
Thank you so much for writing the book. It's such a very decisive one. I guess I came to get your take on the threats, in the sense that, AI, because I don't think you've seen the last of it, right? It's still an emerging technology. The threats that it poses to the newsroom, right? Do you think a time will come where we will have no need for editors because AI is better, editing things? This machine, the old technology is one that is constantly improving itself, and they're training the machine to be better at nuances, even of language, or context and all that. So do you think a time will come where we will no longer need columnists because AI does it better? We will no longer need editors because you cannot beat the technology.
Should I? Yes, sir. So, Mr. Adedo, thank you very much indeed for that. And as you were asking the question, I looked around the room and I noticed that the journalists in the room were a lot of shifting in their chairs. But that's all right. My straightforward answer would be no. That I do not imagine a time will come when AI will replace journalists. Thank you. What we are able to do, what AI does for us, is, as I said, to take the drudgery off. The real journalism will be done by humans. AI does not have the same creative flair and talent and imprint that humans have. The work of journalism will still be done by journalists and human journalists. What AI has simply done is to raise the boundary, all right? Because it has taken off the drudgery completely. You know, if the reason for which you are, if your journalism is just limited to taking press statements, okay? So you just get press statements from corporates, and corporates have tools writing many of these press statements for them. So if that is where your journalism ends, well, I am sorry for you, and that's really the truth. And it's the same as it is for journalism, as it is with many mundane tasks which such tools have replaced. So if you are not ready and prepared to improve yourself, to improve the quality of your work, to do the journalism itself, AI is not going to do that journalism for you. AI is, as I said, when I'm doing my research about it, so if I'm writing on any topic, one of the things that AI, I can use an AI tool to do, for example, is it helps me to expand the range and potential source of information that I can curate to research that subject. But the actual writing and the voice in it, the direction, the moral agent in what I am doing remains mine. The responsibility, the moral agent remains mine, and the moral agent to decide whether this is the direction. Okay, I'll give you the example of when I did that experiment. What AI, as far as flair, as far as English, it does not know, AI, for example, does not know what I think about the Dangote NNPC wahala. It cannot, if I ask AI to write an article like Azu on the Dangote NNPC, it will write, but it probably, the information that I have, that I got from human contacts in writing my piece, information that is not available openly. You look out for my columns. I talked to human beings and got inside information about what is happening. AI is not going to do that. AI will get you information that is likely available in the open space. It will get some of those for you and so forth. It will do the normal, but that extra work that extra effort that makes your work stand out, AI will never do, and it will not replace you.
So I'm sorry, I hope I'm not monopolizing. So what about roles like editorial assistant? I remember in Olajede's interview, he had mentioned that he would use AI to do research,
transcription.
Transcription.
Yes.
Which were things that human beings would do tomorrow, right? Or used to do before.
Right.
Maybe even the work of an editor. I imagine you've written the piece, you want to send it to someone else to edit. Do you think that the time will come where we'll say, we used to have 10, but we only need 2 people. We don't need an editorial assistant any longer because AI will do that for us.
Oh yeah, sure. You see, AI is going to, and you see, we have a way of thinking when things are happening, especially in Nigeria. We have a way of behaving like the frog. Okay, so the frog is in water, it's heating up. If those things are happening far away, it's still going to be a long time. My job is still safe, labor is still cheap in Nigeria. No, I'm a long way from being replaced by AI. And then by the time it's knocking on the door, it's too late to jump out. That really is a problem with us. So, we are thinking, no, it's too expensive, which some of these tools are pretty expensive, now, but it's not always going to be that. All right? Some routine jobs, and I just gave an example, for example, of press statements. If it's a press job that doesn't require any additional, and if you also watch, if you are a football fan, for example, mundane things that Like when the commentator is telling you the number of people in the stadium, and giving you some basic statistics or data about how many times this person scored, and those things is not, it's just as some tool, some research tool. And those things are pulled up, because if you also watch your screen, top of your screen, you see the room, and they're able to pick things that are happening. Those are things that, so that the commentator, if you listen, for example, to someone like Peter Drury, he gives you commentary that makes you enjoy the sport. And that increases its value. It increases its value. Okay? So we must invest more in ourselves. Because whether it's in journalism, whether it's, I don't know whether it's basic administration, whether it's, AI is basically going to do most of the mundane tasks. It is. And the cost of doing it is going to be cheaper and cheaper by the day.
All right, thank you. I saw the lady's hand up earlier.
Hi, so my question is, because you mentioned earlier how important it is to invest in ourselves, and that what AI can replace is the style and the voice of a particular writer. So my question is, how do you develop that voice for yourself, and how do you know you have actually developed a voice for yourself? And then the second question is, you mentioned that you use AI to collect like resources that you need for your work. Is it wrong? Because sometimes I find that when I tend to go read back what other people have written about something, it would influence what I want to write, which I don't like, because it now makes me it makes me very unsure of the original thoughts I had for myself. So how do I avoid that?
Yes, please.
Chinelo, thank you very much. I would have been disappointed if you didn't ask any question. You're a very troublesome girl. But troublesome in a good way. Well done. So, I mean, if you go to chapters 1 and 2, I struggle with finding, and we all do. I mean, it's like when you want to start anything initially, all right? And let's face it, English is not our mother tongue. So sometimes you have to first of all think in your language, and then you translate that thinking, and then so that it's okay. It's okay to struggle, all right? It's not a bad thing. But there is 6 or 7 billion people we have in the world. Now, each person, the same way each person has unique features in their iris or their thumbprint, it's the same way your voice is entirely unique. But it is not wrong to get help from multiple sources before you find your voice. It's not bad at all. As a matter of fact, and I think I said this in the book as well, you find that in the chapter on finding my voice. Professor Latin, I don't know of a better satirist than this. There was a time I loved his, so I started trying to write satire. I said, but I am not really, this is not me, it's not me. Then I tried to write a bit again, like I tried to copy the style of the Three Musketeers, Dan Agbese, Yakubu Mohammed, and Rebu, and of course, if you dial back a bit, Dele Giwa. This for me, I grew up the same way Mr. Adedosu said he grew up, looking for my column and women about his column and column of other great writers. These were the people I wanted. Sometimes I would pick Dele Giwa back then in the column in Concord called Parallax Snaps. Sunday Concord. This person is not a human being. This person must be a god. Because, how can a human being write like this, So, out of that adulation, I wanted to, Ross, you are not here now. This is not me, okay? But through it all, one thing I never failed to do was I never stopped reading, never stopped writing, So the more I read, the more I write, and of course, Some of you have read about how Professor Latundari once described one of the articles as a classic example of disco journalism. So very quickly, what happened then was that, of course, I was trying to write again. I was reading David Copperfield. I'm sure that I was great with classics, you know. So David Copperfield, you know, by Charles Dickens, of course. Great books. So I just finished reading that book. Fat book, very fat. So I had a term paper to write, and I tried to write like Charles Dickens. I thought I thought I did a good job. I submitted my term paper. Instead of me to go home during the vacation, I stayed behind to do my term paper, and then I submitted my term paper. I told myself that this one, I've killed the man. I will get an A, nothing less than an A. So I submitted. And he had a visitor in his office. He immediately started reading the file. He said, Azu, come back. I came back. He said, what have you been reading? Oh, I've been reading computer. He said, really? I said, yes, sir. He laughed. I said, this cannot be laughed of approval. He laughed. He said, but it's not showing at all. Countenance. He said, you know what? This is a classic example of disco journalism.
Whatever that means.
Oh God. You know, and you can imagine. And I said, my friend, come and take it back and go and write. You know, I just went in the thing under my pillow and slept. I said, I beg you, I cannot come and die. You know, anyway, the point is that, but then of course I slept through it and then redid it. And it turned out the rewrite, with a bit of help from me, turned out to be my first article in the Garki. I was 1986. From that, I began to develop my, and I got paid 20 naira, which was big money. Yeah, yeah, then 86. I got paid 20 naira. I was a big man, very big. You know. So I said, if I can get paid, you know, this monetizing thing, you don't tell. I said, if I can get 20 naira, let me do some more rights. You know, so my point is that I from what I read, from what I got, gradually I began to find my own voice. And that's why I can recognize, even if I give AI an assignment, and it does it, that this AI is a joke. It still hasn't got my voice. Now, so that really is the point. You will ultimately find your voice. And if you also read what Billy Olojede said in chapter 15 of my book, you see that he talks about voracious reading. Chinyere was telling me when we came, he said, I know you feel like you should be living in this place. I said, how did you know that? You know, I just feel like not going home. You know, that's how I feel about being here. Like, not going home, just enjoying the book, enjoying, you know, what's there. Because that's really, you cannot give. It's not possible. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much, Mr. Ishiekwene. Do you have any further questions? Yes, please.
So my question is, so I watched you and I've seen how much it's like you're evolving. It's like you're doing new things and newer things. And what's that thing that makes you do something new? It's like when I see that, I'll be like, hi, if I'm not like this when I grow up, something must be wrong with me. So what's that thing that makes you keep learning, you keep taking the game higher?
Never stop, never settle.
Thank you. I like that. When you remember it,
I think it's a Johnny Walker. Never stop, never settle.
Just keep moving. All right. So maybe I'm trying to be like Johnny Walker. Don't know which label. I don't know which label that is. But that's a blue label. You know. But thank you so much for that great question. Ngozi. So the thing is, and again, if you go to this, I interviewed quite a number of people. See, that's the reason why folks have to try and get it from them. Because one of the things I also did in this book is to look at how we can reinvent ourselves, how we are constantly evolving, how we can reinvent ourselves, and it's possible, all right? If you are never satisfied just with who you are, because it's amazing if human beings can just, if we as human beings, such extraordinary potential that we have been endowed with, if only you can just find just that bit of it, and you can, it's inexhaustible. Whatever it is, whatever talent that God has given you that you find, it's inexhaustible. It's more than enough. I guarantee you. That is more, well, it depends on how you apply it. It depends on how you use it. It depends on whether you are, and there's so many things that can make us content. So many distractions, you know, that things that can make you content. Maybe you are not getting the sort of approval, sort of encouragement, or sort of network or group that you keep. There's so many things that can, or situation in which you find so many things that can discourage it, make you feel despondent, make you feel that, or maybe the pay is not enough, and there are so many things you have to try, to do to make ends meet. How much time do you have to invest? But ultimately, if you find that place in yourself, that thing that you absolutely, truly, deeply love to do, and you settle with it, you will find that it calls more to you. Because that talent will demand more of you. The more you give of yourself, it will ask more. Thank you.
Thank you. That's deep. First of all, you have to find that thing first. And I think that would take a lot of work. But sometimes maybe not so much work. Maybe just
being true to oneself, reflecting and saying, what am I really good
exactly.
at?
Why am I here? What am I doing?
Those are,
I sincerely know.
Questions.
Indeed. We've come to the end of the book reading. I haven't seen any more hands up. Is there one more question? One more question? Any more questions? He's afraid to ask.
Because he doesn't want to be called a monopoly.
Yes.
There's
strong terms now.
Yeah, well, so I'm keen to find out why we don't get to see lots of books from journalists in Nigeria, right? So I like the fact that we have, regular commentaries, fairly well at that, but we don't get to see as much books as you would expect, particularly in a country where so much is happening in the body politic. So particularly regarding on epochal moments, national library transition. So what you are, a senior journalist, so you want to provide an explanation for your client as to why you are not writing, we're not getting so many books from.
One of the reasons why I'm happy about this question, I'm not going to be the only one who will answer it.
No.
All right. All right, Mr. Adito, thank you once again for that question. But I think I've looked at your shelf. I've seen some books by some journalists. I've seen the book by Olusegun Adeniyi. I've seen the one by Femi Adesina. Sorry?
Ishiekwene.
Oh well, you see, I'm the baby brother of these accomplished and prolific writers. So what that tells me by just looking at your library is that I think we're beginning to find people. And a number of other journalists. I mean, I just had the privilege of reviewing Ray Chibree's book, The Power of One, the other day. And there are quite a number of journalists who are, but not enough, to be honest, not enough. And I think sometimes also it is the idea of what writing could be, that people who are thinking that perhaps they want to wait till towards the end of their journey, their career, so they want to do their memoir or do autobiography or something towards the end of that. But no, I think that documentation can be about moments. Can be about moments. Yes, so you can just choose the moment in your journey and dwell on it. Because there are many persons who are also looking up to you, who are depending on you, on your experience, who you're writing, whose journey your own writing might help. So I think that my thinking would be that more and more of us begin to look at, not look at the entire life, but just look at the journey. Look at where you have served. If you have served a particular government or done a particular thing. I tell you, for example, that one of the things that has occurred to me, even in the last 1 year or so, I got this book out. I'm asking myself, and after which, of course, I went, oh, well, that's cappuccino, don't worry, that's what, So I'm asking myself, is it possible also for me to do a small book? It doesn't have to be a David Copperfield-sized book, okay, 800 and something pages, on marketing, using social media to market my book. And I have curated sufficient content. I kid you not, that if I wanted to do a book, that can just be a moment in my journey that could help other people who have books far better than mine, but they don't even know what to do with it. So I think it may just be because often we create contents and we go through moments that will enrich the lives of other people. That will enrich, but we don't think it is enough. No. It's just about moments and how you capture those moments. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I hope you're satisfied with the response. Right.
You have a take?
No, I don't. And maybe that will also tell you why we don't write. When you say, no, I don't have a take, not because I don't really have a take, but because I don't want to share my take. It's as simple as that. It's as simple as that, but maybe not so simple. So I think I can confidently say that we have come to the end of this book reading. I hope that it's been a very enlightening session for you. If you haven't bought a copy of the book and you're still trying to decide whether or not you should buy it, I hope that the session we've had here today will be more than convincing. Oh my husband, Linda at the back. Oh! And my dear friend Linda walked in. This was going on. So I hope that it's been able to convince you on why you should get this book, and not just for yourself, but those who think that it might also be of great help to those who have perhaps expressed an interest in writing and are still very scared of, I don't know where to start, or what the journey is going to be like. I hope that this book and the book reading, has been able to provide some insights for them as to where to go, how to start, what to do along the journey, what happens when we're getting older, how to handle trolls. Because for some people, that's where the problem is. I do not want to get criticized. I do not want to read critics. They can demoralize you. I found that particular chapter really interesting. In fact, if I have two favorite chapters, it will be the very last one and the chapter that dealt with trolls. So thank you so much for including it, and thank you for writing such a very insightful. Initially, when I started reading, I said, "Is this for students?" Because there was also work to be done at the end. I mean, I'll just tell you what I mean. It says exercises, so it tells you what the chapter is about, then it goes ahead to write about it, then later on you see exercises, and then it includes reading lists. Excuse me. So like if you want to read more on it, there's some more to read. So I sincerely hope that you have enjoyed yourself this evening. We thank you so much for being a part of this book reading, and we sincerely hope that you will get copies not just for yourselves, but also for those that you love and can grow in the art. On that note, Mr. Ishiekwene, any last words?
No, except to thank those who have made time out to be here, and also to thank those who have, in different, diverse ways, supported this, encouraged me. I really, as I said, I think was that in the acknowledgement, I didn't set out to do any groundwork. I just needed to express myself. So my deep gratitude to all those who have supported and encouraged me, family, friends, co-workers, colleagues. Deeply grateful to all of them for their forbearance.
Can I ask you something? I mean,
yes.
You talked about marketing earlier. Do you have a goal for how much you'd like to raise?
ask me that question. You know what? Oscar Wilde said about temptation. He says the only way to overcome temptation is to yield to. But don't Oscar Wilde, of course, is a crazy writer. But I love him. One of the But I mean, to answer your question, I mean, it would not be a bad idea if I made 100 million from it.
You know? Certainly.
Oh, we're thinking alike.
Not a bad idea.
But really, more importantly, I think that I would be more deeply gratified if some student somewhere, some person is looking for direction, someone who's, trying to find their voice to solve a problem, comes to me to say that, you know what, that book was the moment of impact, the moment of personal encounter and intimacy. That would also be deeply gratified.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So, thank you very much. That's actually all. I think we can take pictures at this point. Those who would like to take pictures with you. And he's right here, so he can autograph your book if you'd like him to, and after you've purchased it.